Well, hey, Josh, welcome back to the program officially. I'm so excited to have you on here again as a guest of Voices of Certainty. And honestly, I had a ball the last time we were on our program together. I definitely want you to come back and talk about your research and all the things that you do because you're just fascinating to listen to. But today, this is really a special episode of Voices of Certainty that we are doing where you're going to share your testimony of coming out of New Age and the occult. And I just cannot even tell you how elated I am to talk to you about this. One of the main reasons is that I am going to start doing some testimonies on this channel that are highlighting people's journey to faith. But a big part of those people that I want to interview are those that are have come out of New Age or that have made that journey through New Age and found the true Jesus, right? Not the ascended master Jesus. And the reason I want to do that is because you and I both know we believe in, eschatology from this pre-tribulation standpoint, this premillennial standpoint, but there is a one world order that is coming, a new world order, and there's going to be a religion that is manning the helm on a certain arm of that order. And I firmly believe that it is New Age. And we are seeing so many pieces of New Age creep into the church. We're seeing our friends and family get wrapped up in it. We may even have friends and family that are super wrapped up in it. And they honestly, I think they think that they're doing good things because they're just trying to become a better person. So today, as we kind of go through this journey, I really want you to shed some light into all of the things, even the darkest pieces, if you're able to, that you were involved with. So let's just kind of start from the beginning. How did your journey into New Age and the supernatural start for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you again for having me on, and for being one of the few that will talk about this topic, because most main we in our little fringe Christian community here, we talk about this stuff a lot, but the mainstream church at large doesn't. They'll ignore this. 99% of churches don't even deal with this or actively participate in it, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and that was kind of what led me into it. So I was born and raised a Christian, and I was raised in a Baptist church, and I'm not gonna dog on the church too much because they are the ones that introduced me to Jesus in the first place. So I wouldn't be
Absolutely.
a Christian, wouldn't be a Christian without them. But they were really, they were really, I guess you could say, straight laced, or there were certain just like supernatural things they would not talk about. And looking back, I on one hand, I get it, because there are some Christians that just want to be really, really careful, and they don't want to tread into areas that might, not. So, but at the same time, there's another effect that produces that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's what happened with me, because I was really curious as a kid, and so I've always loved prophecy, and I've always loved just the weirder things. And so I would ask about like aliens specifically. I was a big sci-fi geek, still am.
Right. Yeah. Hence the work you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so ever since I was a little kid, I remember just asking my pastor or asking people at the church, like, well, what about aliens and UFOs? Like, how does, and they would tell me, well, Josh, all that's demonic. And it's like, okay, well, fair enough. But where do we get that from? Where in the Bible does it say that? And then I was usually told, well, Josh, you just got to take it on faith. And, they'd have a big smile and a chuckle about it, like it wasn't a serious question. And but take what on faith? That you're just telling me it's demonic and I just have to believe that, even though you can't point to a single Bible verse? And so that always bothered me. I felt I didn't feel answered. I felt dismissed. What would have been a lot better is if the pastor or the people at church or whatever, if they would have just said, I really don't know. I believe it's demonic. I don't think there's anything good in it, but I don't know how to defend that biblically. Let's look into it together, or give me a week. Maybe next week I can look into it and have a better answer for you. But right now I don't know. But here's the reasons I believe it's demonic. And then just, if it was that would, it still might not have been as much information as I would have liked, but at least it would have been an opinion. It would have been some reason beyond, well, you just have to trust me. You just have to take it on faith, Josh. And then being laughed off and just kind of dismissed because of it. So I held on to that I wasn't mad at the church or anything. I wasn't angry. I was kind of unfulfilled. But so in my personal life, my mom and dad were going through a divorce, and there was just this really ugly situation with my dad where we had to move. And I was 12 years old when we moved. So we were away from that church. And my mom was a Christian. She passed years ago, but she was a Christian, but she wasn't a really deep theological Christian or anything. It was kind of like surface. Like, she definitely believed in Jesus. She had the faith. She's in heaven, all that stuff. But it was really easy for her to get into some just bad theology, because some stuff, they just didn't talk much about like demons or even like, things like psychics. Like, my mom sort of believed in psychics, sort of. Like, she allowed for the possibility. Like, she would watch Sylvia Brown on Oprah and stuff like that.
I remember her. I do remember Sylvia Brown. Her and Mrs. Cleo. Do you remember the commercials for Mrs. Cleo? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that was our generation. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and so like my mom and I would watch this together, but she didn't fully understand how demonic that was, and neither did I. It was like a curiosity. It was like, I wonder what's going on. I wonder is she really talking to angels? We didn't know. And so by the time that I was 12, I should back up a little bit too, because this also added to what got me into the New Age. When I was really young, ever since I was a little kid, ever since I can remember, there's a big gap of my childhood I have almost no memory of, but I do remember a couple of things, and they were terrifying. And so I, as far as I remember, I always had sleep paralysis. And for those, most people probably know what that is, but for the few who don't, it's, there's kind of like our Christian, spiritual kind of explanation of it. Then there's the medical side. On the medical side, what's happening is there's 3 different chemicals that go off in your brain when you go to sleep. I forget like what they all do, but one of them, like makes you go unconscious, and then one of them actually paralyzes your body. Well, what happens in the brain sometimes is it does that. They don't go off in the right order, and you'll get paralyzed before you go unconscious. And then the other one like makes you dream or whatever, or contributes to that. And then so the medical side says that the unconscious one doesn't go off, and the paralyzing one does, and then the dream one does. So on the medical side, they'll say that basically you either just slip into the state, or you'll kind of wake up into the state, but you're in this paralyzed state, you can't move, and then you hallucinate and you see stuff, and basically you're dreaming while you're awake.
Right.
And I disagree
that's that's not what's going on all the time.
Exactly. Because why is it always nightmares? It's never good. Know. Anybody who's ever had sleep paralysis has never had a pleasant experience with it. I normally, when I dream, and I haven't had sleep paralysis in years, and I can talk about that later too as we continue on through this. But I usually when I dream, they're really goofy, silly, just weird dreams. They're not really scary. But I have never had one single, even like remotely pleasant sleep paralysis episode. It's always been horrific and even abusive. So so when I was a kid, the term sleep paralysis wasn't even around. So I would try to tell my mom about it. And my mom would say, well, you're just having bad dreams and all that. Come to find out years and years and years later, when I was an adult, my mom actually admitted she was having it too. She didn't want to tell me when I was a kid because she didn't want to scare me. And she didn't have any answers for it. She didn't know what it was. Yep. So I understand, I wish she would have just told me that when I was a kid, but I understand why she didn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, at that time, I would have sleep paralysis, and they were always really scary. And so being a little kid, I didn't know how to deal with that. My mom was telling me it was just bad dreams, but then there were other things too. So when I was really, really little, I don't remember specific sleep paralysis episodes. I just remember generally kind of what they were. I remember them more after we moved and when I was about 12 years old. But in that old house, during this big gap that I have, like where I don't remember hardly anything, except for just a couple of things. But my mom told me she told me a bunch of stuff way later before she died, but she told me that and I had this corroborated from a couple other family members, but when I was a little kid in the old house, I guess I had like an imaginary friend. It was this little girl that I would talk to all the time. But my mom said that there was one time where she was sleeping on the couch, and she was laying down on the couch watching TV. She had turned the TV off, and as she was kind of drifting off, she like felt this little hand hold her hand, and it like freaked her out. There was another time that she would. I remember she would have this big rock in front of her bedroom door to keep her bedroom door open that she brought in from outside. And I never knew why, but I vaguely remember. I remember little tiny details, but actual full memories don't really start for me until about 11, 12 years old. But I found out later that was because her door would always slam. Like her door would always slam closed at random times, and she thought maybe there was a draft in the room or something. So she got this huge rock, and she would put it in front of the door to keep the door open. Well, then one day the door slammed again, and the rock had been moved. So there was that. There was another time. I do remember this. Well, my mom told me when I was really young, I would always talk about that I was afraid of the monster in the backyard. There was some monster in the backyard. I have zero memory of this, but it was corroborated, and you know, these are things my mom just wouldn't have made up and told me when I was in my 20s for no reason. You know. But I do remember one time, and it's weird. Usually with kids, it's like a monster in the closet or under the bed. For some reason, for me, it was the backyard, and it was only at night that I was like really afraid of it. So one morning, I remember waking up and I heard because I had my bedroom window would like face the backyard. This is one of the few like really vivid, clear memories that I have from that time. And I remember I heard my mom and my dad and my neighbor talking in the backyard. So I went out there to see what was going on. And in our backyard, and we lived in Flint, Michigan, so we weren't like in the middle of the woods or anything like that. It was like right off of Genesee Road. So not like right in the city of Flint or anything, but it definitely wasn't like, and we had a relatively, like, it wasn't a huge backyard, but it wasn't like super small either. Maybe a quarter or a half an acre or something. It wasn't like super big, but every single blade of grass in the backyard was like pushed down, like just flat. It was the weirdest looking thing. There wasn't a single blade of grass.
Almost like a crop circle type situation.
Yes, except there was no design or anything. It was just all perfectly flattened, and only in the backyard, not the front yard, and not in the neighbor's yard either. That's why the neighbor was over there talking, because I suppose they had asked him if it was going on in his backyard too. It was only in ours. And they were talking about it, and they determined they couldn't figure out what it was. So they said, well, maybe because across the main street there was like some woods there, and so they said, well, maybe a herd of deer walked through and they all laid down, and that was like what they came up with. And I remember I was so young, and I'm thinking, no, there would still be grass. Right. It wouldn't be just totally uniform flat. But my dad wasn't a believer at all. My mom was a Christian, but again, not very theologically deep. And I was just a kid, so I knew it wasn't deer, and I think they did too. But they just had to come up with something. So that was really weird.
So let me ask you a question. You mentioned something about this old house. And you may be getting to this, so if I'm jumping ahead, just tell me. I'll get there. Did you ever find out if there was some kind of like occult ritual or seances or anything in the, maybe not even necessarily your family, but had someone opened a door there?
Yeah, I think my mom did on accident. She ended up telling me again, like years later. So before all this happened, my mom, like she was an alcoholic, like way back in the day. And she had so when I was like in my 20s, my mom had this big conversation with me where she just like unleashed all of these secrets. Like she just like basically told me everything. And this was one of them. So I don't know how long ago it was before all this, but she said sometime before all of that, she got really, really drunk by herself one night in one day in the house, I guess. And she started just messing with a Ouija board just to see what would happen.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah, and and then when I was in my 20s, she was telling me this. She said, "Josh, I think that's why all that stuff was happening in that house." So at least she was at the point, you know, she realized at that point that was totally wrong. But when she was doing it, she just didn't really know, and you know, but and then again, my dad was not a believer, and he was like definitely like the most physically and emotionally abusive person I've ever met in my life. And I found out later, he was fascinated by the fact that the house was like haunted. I mean, and it wasn't haunted by ghosts. This is clearly demons.
Yes.
But he was fascinated. He would talk to these things, and he would tell them to move stuff, and they would. And like his eyes would just light up with excitement about it. And so anyway, at some point, my mom told me that at some point the activity was getting so bad and so weird that she had seen some psychic on TV. It wasn't anybody that we would know. It was one of those just one-off, like a psychic on some talk show that was on there once and nobody ever heard of her. She had somehow managed to get a hold of this psychic to bring the psychic over to the house to see what to do. And which is obviously really a bad thing to do. But she didn't know at the time. She didn't feel like she could tell anybody at her church or, and whatever. And and she probably didn't want to admit that she got drunk and messed with a Ouija board by herself.
Sure.
But so she called this psychic over, and the psychic told her that there were 3 ghosts in the house and 1 malevolent spirit like in the backyard. But didn't give her anything to do about it. Just told her that's what's going on, and then I guess just left. I think it's all demonic, anyway. So so just the little bit that I remember from my early childhood, it was a lot of this really dark spiritual stuff, and not really having anybody to talk to about it. Because like my friends at the time, they were just kids like me. They didn't really have any frame of reference for it. So I kind of learned early on to just not talk about that stuff. And then, my mom was just telling me it was bad dreams because she didn't want to freak me out more. And then I found out years later when I was an adult, all this other stuff was going on in the background. So that was kind of my childhood. But I think that probably, because of that, I just got really curious about some of these weirder things, like what's going on. So then, so that was in that house. We ended up, just because the divorce, just terrible things with my dad, we basically had to flee and move. So we moved in with who would become my stepdad later. And it's funny, like, even though me and him didn't really get along when I was a kid, like, we're best friends now. Like,
I love that. I love that.
He's Grandpa Mike to my kids. He's awesome. Like,
that's amazing.
He to me is like, and I think I am too, but like, he to me is evidence that if somebody wants to, they can change. And Mike was never a bad guy. He just didn't have, I think that he was just in this, he didn't have any kids before. He was pretty young himself. He didn't really know how to be a dad to an 11, 12-year-old boy. And so I was 11 or 12. So, I was just becoming a teenager. So we butt heads a lot. But as we kind of grew up, and especially after my mom died, that really, he ended up calling me and he said, anything that I've ever done wrong, I apologize. I want another chance. And I really want to be there for you and be your dad. And he's like former cop, Air Force. Like, he doesn't talk about emotional stuff at all.
I was gonna say he's not really emotionally available. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
This was the first time that he actually was. So I was like, of course, I forgive you immediately. And then from that day on, we've been great. And it's not that I didn't have a dad. I had a dad. Mike's my dad. Because he actually stepped in and took on that job. But my biological father was never my dad. No one gets into full-time ministry to make money. At least no one should. Given that, Daily Renegade accepts donations from those who care to help keep us going. Now, because Daily Renegade does not want to be told by the government what we can and can't say, we're not 501c3, so your donations are not tax deductible, but that's not why you're giving anyway, to get something back for yourself. Speaking of which, we here are never going to promise that if you donate, God will reward you with even more financial success. We're not about making promises for God here. But what I can promise is your donations are very much appreciated and help the continuation of everything we do here at Daily Renegade to reach the world with the truth of the Bible. Also, as many of you know, my son Nathan has had some very serious medical issues that we are treating with good, all-natural and holistic remedies. But of course, those are very expensive and are not covered by insurance, so your donations help go towards his health care as well. If you can't afford to donate, you can always donate your time in prayer, which is far more valuable anyway. way. Let's be serious. So pray for our wisdom, pray for God's guidance for us, and that we never lose focus on what's really important, which is using Daily Renegade as a light of truth that the world so desperately needs right now, especially in these times. As always, thank you so much for your generosity, and I pray God blesses you greatly. So anyway, we ended up moving in with him. He took us in because we were just in a really dangerous, and also my biological father's parents were our landlords, and the house was in really bad shape. There was mold growing on the inside of the walls. I was having asthma attacks. They weren't doing anything about it. So for a lot of reasons, we had to leave. But my dad started getting abusive towards me. That was the thing where my mom was like, okay, we got to go. You're never going to see this guy again. So
are you an only child, by the way?
Yes. Well,
okay.
Yes, but I do have
with your biological parents. You were an only child.
Yeah. With both my biological parents, I'm an only child. They only had me. My dad has had other kids. One of them I'm really close with now. We're about 10 years apart, but I didn't.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even connect with him until he was 12 years old himself, and I was in my 20s. And we're really close now. Like we're
Amazing.
as close as brothers can be.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he's a Christian. He's been through some stuff too, so we bond on a lot of that. And so anyway, so we moved in with Mike. The sleep paralysis continued, but okay. At this point, once I was out of the house, like looking back, I have more clear memories of after we moved out. So like once I was 12 and up, that's where I feel like my real full memories actually start. So I was still having sleep paralysis. It was a couple of times a month, 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes more, sometimes less. I remember one of the more intense ones. There was a couple of them that really stick out, but one of them I was laying in bed, and I always kept my bedroom door closed because we had cats, and then they would come in, and I didn't have a computer. I had a word processor. This is how long ago that was.
Let's show our age today, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it had one of those big clunky keyboards that are really, really loud. So
yeah, the keys are like...
Yeah,
I know.
Super loud. If I didn't close my door, the cats would come in and jump and walk all over that and wake me up. So yeah. I always kept my door closed. This one night I had kind of woken up, and I was in sleep paralysis, and I was like facing the door, sort of. I was laying on my back and facing to the left towards my door, and I started hearing this weird shuffling sound coming from right outside the door. And then I started to see the knob turn, and it opened, and then this shadowy, cloaked figure shuffled in like real slow, and then turned around to face me. I couldn't see its face because it had like a hood on it, and it was all black.
Is it like the Hat Man? Is this what
people say describe? That I haven't seen that particular one. This was more like a cloak, like a hood. Okay. I haven't seen the Hat Man figure that a lot of people see, but it was kind of similar in the way that it was just all black. And I couldn't see its face. I saw kind of an outline under the hood, and it looked really long, which freaked me out. Oh, yeah. And then it turned to look at me, and it looked right in my eyes. And again, I couldn't see its eyes or anything. It was just black. But I just got this like wave from this thing of just hatred and anger and evil and just every dark, horrible thing. It like came on as a wave from this thing. I felt it from it. Like I felt the feelings, but I knew it was like coming from this thing. And then it raised one of its hands, and it had like this dagger or something. I couldn't really get a good look at it because I could only, when you're in sleep paralysis, you can only move your eyes and your tongue. Yes. And the reason why you can move your tongue is so that chemical that paralyzes you, it doesn't paralyze your tongue because you would choke to death in your sleep if it did. So if you do have sleep paralysis and you're trying to get out of it, obviously the best thing to do is call on the name of the Lord in your mind, because you're probably not going to be able to talk. Just what I've done is run it through. But if you can scrape, if your mouth is open enough and you can scrape your tongue against your teeth to kind of give you a little bit of pain to wake you up, sometimes that helps. But but anyway, I was 12. I didn't know any of this stuff. But so it lifted up this dagger thing. It drove it into my side on this side and like pulled it across. And I remember just closing my eyes and waiting for the pain. And I'm just praying and I'm like calling out to Jesus in my mind to protect me and to make this stop. And I was waiting for the pain and I didn't feel anything. And except just where it had tried to cut, it was kind of tingly, but there wasn't any pain. So I opened my eyes. And I remember right before it did it like leaned on the bed, and I actually felt the bed like dip down while it leaned in to stab me. So it pulled out the dagger, and again I couldn't like look down to really get a good look at what was going on, but I saw like it pulled out the dagger, it lifted back up, I felt the bed rise back up, and then I got another blast of anger and hatred and evil, and just this thing like just despised me. And then it turned around and shuffled out of the room. And then for like a second, I got out of it and I was out of it. And then I don't know if it was just fear or exhaustion, but I passed right out. I just like unconscious until the next morning. And so the next morning I woke up and I saw that my bedroom door was still open. And so that's why this one stuck out so much to me, because it was one of the very few where there was some physical evidence the next day that something was happening, and it wasn't just all in my head. It wasn't just like a waking nightmare. And so,
did you have anything on your body from where? Because sometimes people wake up with scratches and all kinds of crazy things. Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't have anything, and I checked, but yeah, the only thing that I ever felt from it was just that weird kind of tingle for a couple of seconds, and that was it. I think God protected me. But yeah, so but the next morning I asked Mike and I asked my mom, I said like, hey, did you guys open my door in the middle of the night? And I didn't tell them why. And they were both like, no, why would we do that? And I was like, okay, I figured it was open when I woke up. So that's just why I'm asking. And so that kind of stuff continued. There was another one, and then I'll continue on the New Age stuff, and because all of this leads to why. But so
share it all, man.
Absolutely. Share it all. One of the other ones that really stuck out, it was probably a couple years. Yeah, it was this one. I was in high school, and the friends that I had in high school, I wasn't like running with the wrong crowd or anything, but they also weren't necessarily Christians or very good influences on me. But this new kid moved to the area, started going to school. His name was Rob. I'm still friends with him today. And he is a Christian. And it was funny because at the time, like, had I known now, like if everything that I understand now, if I knew that back then, Rob would have hands down been my best friend. And looking back, he was, and I just didn't realize it. Like, we were good friends, but I didn't consider him a best friend, and I really should have, because he was like one of the only good Christian influences that I had from my age group. But we were good. We were really good friends, so we would talk a lot and stuff. Well, this one night, I think by this time the word processor was gone, so I was sleeping with my door open. So
the cats were allowed to come in.
Cats were allowed to come in. And so the door was already open. Nothing opened the door. My bed was in a different position. My bed was now like facing directly, the door. So I had sleep paralysis, and then I saw what looked like my friend Rob come into the door. And he looked at me really, really angry. And he said, like, in a really angry tone, like one of our inside jokes, but he said it like threatening. And then he like jumped on top of me, grabbed me, and just started like shaking me. And I came out of sleep paralysis being shaken. And I was like sitting up coming out of it. And then, he was gone and everything was back to normal. But I was like sitting up. And again, I didn't have any marks on me or anything like that. But that was the first time that I came out, like, I think the only time I came out of sleep paralysis actually sitting up like that, because I was being thrashed around. Well, I had so my very first introduction to anything new agey, I had a friend at the time. Her name was Heather, and she was one of the few that I could kind of talk about some of the weird, like, spiritual, like just weird, dark stuff that was happening. I could talk to her about like some of this. And again, I didn't even know the word sleep paralysis yet. That didn't come out till later, but I could talk to her about it, and she wouldn't get weird or anything with me. Yeah. So the next day I told her that, and she said, wow, maybe that's a sign that you should, I know you're friends, but maybe that's a sign you should stay away from him. Maybe he's like just going to be, he's going to do something bad to you or something someday. Maybe you should stay away from it. And I'm so glad that I never listened to her advice. I can absolutely see what it is now. It was a demon taken on the form of my friend Rob, because he's the only real Christian friend I had, and trying to scare me and trying to make me think that I shouldn't be around Rob. And thank God I never took that advice. Again, like looking back, like Rob throughout that time was absolutely like my best friend in the world, and like helped me out a lot. And he was just a really good influence. Actually, the only reason I'm with Christina right now is because he encouraged me to go for it. My wife Christina. When we first met each other, she was like, she would do runway modeling and stuff, and I'm me, so I'm thinking like I've got no chance. And I remember I was over at.
She is a beauty, I will say.
Oh
she's
my gosh!
I
I still can't believe like this is reality for me. Like I can't believe I ended up with somebody like this. And but I never thought I would ever in a million years have a chance with someone like her. And I remember I was talking to Rob about it, and I was kind of bummed out, and I was like, I really, really like her, and it just, I know I'm not going to have the courage to ask her out, and I don't. And we were friends, and I was like, even if I did, I don't want to ruin our friendship over it, because if she doesn't feel the same way, that could obliterate everything. You can't really walk that back once you tell somebody you have feelings for him. And but he really encouraged me. He's like, Josh, you are selling yourself short. You are not what you think you are. You think so low of yourself, and you really shouldn't. And and like he really built me up, and he gave me a lot of confidence. And because of that, I ended up asking her out, and she said yes. And then we're married and 5 kids now, and so it all worked.
Yeah, he's like, you won her, dude. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I love it.
But it's so interesting because I don't know that I would have had the guts to do that. And there were a couple other guys that, because we all worked together. There were a couple other guys that guys know. There were a couple other guys that liked her too, and they were a lot more confident than I was. And if I had waited any longer, one of them would have ended up asking her out, and maybe
they'd beat you to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm really glad I didn't listen to the Heather's advice back then, because it turned out he was like the best thing in the world. But anyway, so I was having all these experiences, not a whole lot of people to talk to about it, and then it got to the point where I was 18, ready to move out, be on my own, and for a little while I would stay with different friends and stuff. And it had gotten to the point that this sleep paralysis stuff was such a problem. I would before I would move in with somebody, I'd like live with a friend for a few months and go to another friend, and just trying to save up enough money to get my own apartment and stuff. But the sleep paralysis problem had gotten so bad that before I went and moved in with anybody, I would have to tell them, hey, just so you know, I have like really bad nightmares. And by this time I had known the term sleep paralysis. I was like, it's actually called sleep paralysis. There might be times in the middle of the night you might hear me making like really strange, just weird, like almost scary noises, like I'm choking or something. I'm not choking.
How embarrassing for you to have to like divulge that. Like that's very vulnerable to have to divulge that to people. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Well, I learned it was a lot easier to get it out of the way, in the beginning than have somebody. I lived with somebody for a while, and then one day they're just like, hey, last night you were making a lot of weird noises. What was going on? And then try to backtrack and say, oh, it's actually the sleep paralysis thing. It was better to just get it out of the way. And then also just out of respect for that person, do you want to live with somebody that has these problems? So anyway, I was going to go live with a couple of friends of mine. They were engaged, like boyfriend, girlfriend, engaged. And they had an apartment and they had a spare bedroom. So I worked with both of them, and we all worked at McDonald's together at the time. And so they invited me. They said I could come live with them. And so before that, I went over there, sat down with them, talked to them, and the guy didn't have any problem with it. It's like, oh, okay, we all got our things, that's fine. And then, but then his fiance, her and I got to talking. And she's like, this is what really kicked it off, because she was like, well, tell me more about this, like, sleep paralysis stuff. Like, what happens? What goes on? And I didn't know it at the time, but she was a big time New Ager. And so she was really interested in that. And I said, so I told her more about it, told her the same stories I just told you. And she was like, genuinely, like, I felt like she was genuinely listening to me. She wasn't dismissing anything, wasn't making fun of anything. She was believing everything. And then she genuinely, like, wanted to help. So she asked me, she was like, well, have you ever heard of astral projection? And I said, no, what's that? And she said, well, it's this practice that you can, some people believe that with the right, kind of meditation style, and if you do the right things, you can actually will your soul or your consciousness to leave your body. And maybe if you can learn to do that when you're being attacked, maybe you can get away from the situation, or maybe you can do something. It's some kind of defense. And of course, to me and you now, that sounds like the absolute worst idea and the worst thing to do during a demonic attack. But at the time, it was literally the only solution I've ever heard. And you know how the Bible says, like, when you first hear a matter, it sounds right, but then after you hear the other side, like, but and
here's the thing: you can tell, like, this girl. I don't know what all you're getting ready to divulge with her, but guaranteed, most of the time, people wrapped up in New Age, they're not coming from this black magic sort of lens. Yeah, they're coming from a lens of, like, wanting to be helpful. They're wanting to be better people. Like, everyone has spiritual questions that they need answers to, and the New Age can answer a lot of them for you. Yeah, and so they're coming from that lens, and clearly she could tell, oh, he's tormented. She might even use that word. Yep. And she's thinking, well, I know about this. This might be a helpful tool. So I can see how, if you don't know any better, you go, yeah, I'm willing to try anything because I am tormented.
Yep, that's exactly what it was. She was not coming from some sneaky, secret, malicious place or anything. She was just trying to be a friend and just trying to help.
Yes.
And that's the thing about deception. You don't know you're deceived when you're deceived. And she didn't know, and I didn't either. And so since it was like the only solution I was ever offered, I thought, okay, like, I'll try it. And she gave me a book on astral projection. And this book basically, I forgot to mention too, when I was 12 years old, when we moved, my mom gave me the option. She was like, Josh, do you even want to continue going to church anymore? Because if you don't, we don't really have to go. We don't have to find a new church here. What 12-year-old is like gonna
sold?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll stay home on sleep in on Sundays. So
especially if you're not you don't love your church and you're not plugged in. Like, if I would have had that option growing up, I'd have been like, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would have been. Yeah.
And I can look back now and see, like, she didn't really want to go, and she kind of figured that, like, I was gonna, but so I didn't have, like, any church environment in like the new place with Mike and my mom and everything. So I didn't really have any, the foundation that I had, like, I had certain foundational things that I would never betray. Like, I've never denied Jesus throughout my whole New Age stuff, never denied him, but I definitely started believing a lot of unbiblical things. But it was.
Did you see him in a different light? You may get to this, but did you see him as an ascended master at some point?
Not quite at that point, but the way that I started to believe was that, not that he was an ascended master, but that there were just certain things that the Bible doesn't tell us, and we could add in this New Age stuff with what we know about the Bible. And then, maybe Jesus did want us to do all this stuff, but for whatever reason, he left it out of the Bible because it's not for everybody. It's just for special people, because that's the thing about New Age. It makes you feel, it gives you an ego like no other.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and especially once you find out that these things are real. Doesn't mean they're good.
Oh, yeah.
But when you find out they're real,
they work.
Yeah, they really do. And so that book basically became, I got obsessed with it. It basically became my Bible, this book on astral projection. And for 6 months, I practiced. I did everything that it said to do in there. I even became, for a very short while, I became a vegetarian and then a vegan, which anybody that knows me would laugh at that, because I eat, like, meat as much as I possibly can. Like,
we love our meat. Love the meat.
I am absolutely like a carnivore, and like, I've done the carnivore diet several times. I always feel good, like, after I do it for like 3 months. But
we're not eating bugs, to Bill Gates, if he's watching. We're not going to eat bugs.
No, not at all. But like, I was all into, like, because the book said that you have a better chance of doing this if you don't eat meat. And so
that makes sense. I know a lot of New Agers that are, they are vegans or have been or vegetarian. Yeah, I've actually never heard that before. I'm glad you brought that forward. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a part in the Bible where it says, there's people that are going to like forbid to eat meat and stuff like that, and it's funny looking back on that. And but yeah, so this book suggested becoming a vegan, but anyway, so I did everything the book said for like 6 months. And then for the first time ever, it actually worked. And I had very little control over it. Oh, and by the way, while this was going on, I had slowly lost the like the sleep paralysis was still happening.
Okay.
But I had long since realized that, the level of like the state your mind has to be in, there's no way you're going to be able to do it during sleep paralysis. So I had already known after 2 or 3 months in that this was not going to be a solution to my problem, but I was already addicted. Okay. I was already hooked. And that's the thing about all these.
You have to practice it outside of that. In other words, like this is a meditation that you're doing consciously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
And so I already knew, okay, I'm not doing this for this reason anymore. Now I'm doing it because I really want to learn it because I was addicted to it. It's a super addicting thing. It's like a drug. I got a friend, John Clash, who wrote a book and he calls this stuff spiritual heroin. That's like exactly what New Age is. And it's such a good way to describe it. That's what it feels like. And you even feel weird if you don't do it for a while. It's exact because I used to have a drug problem too. And it's in a spiritual way, it manifests. It's the same kind of addictive thing. So, so I finally got it to work. I had like no control over it. But I had a little bit of validation because, by this time I was living with somebody else and it was in a house and, they were having a conversation down my room was upstairs. They were having a conversation downstairs far enough away where I naturally would not be able to hear what their conversation was about. But so for the first time I had actually left my body. And I started just kind of floating like down through the floor and into where they were, and I had no control over it. And
could you see your body in the room that you had floated out of? Could you see all of that?
I wasn't in a position where I could see it. So I'm one of the few that's done astral projection. I've never seen my physical body. And the first time was an accident. I just wasn't positioned that way. But the more I learned, the more it was like, if you see your body, it might snap you back into it. Almost like when you have a dream, and then if you start lucid dreaming, once you realize you're in a dream, a lot of times you wake up almost immediately. At least I do. So the book I was reading suggested not. It's like it's okay if you want to look, but you might be snapped back into your body just by looking. Hey, everyone. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, like silver, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late 60s, the late 1960s, that $1,000 would still be $1,000 today, but it would buy you significantly less today due to inflation. Now, if you saved that same $1,000 in silver back in the 1960s, it would be around $28,000 today. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power is in real money, more specifically, silver. Now, you can buy and have the metal shipped discreetly to your door, and what most people don't know is that you can actually convert your IRA or even your 401k into physical silver rather than having all your life savings tied up in the paper fiat system, which is, of course, subject to hyperinflation. So go to dailyrenegade.com right now and click on the Cornerstone Asset Metals banner and sign up to get your free silver report. One of the financial experts will speak with you and find out the best way to protect your savings going forward in these uncertain times. You can also click on the link in the description below that goes directly to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. Make sure you tell them that Josh Peck at Daily Renegade sent you. It is time to stop trusting the evil beast financial system of the world and protect your assets today. But this first time was an accident because I just wasn't positioned in a way to be able to see it anyway. I had just like floated up and then just like down. So once I got to like the first floor, I actually heard a piece of their conversation and what they were talking about. And then right after that, I was back in my body. So I was only out for maybe 5 seconds, you know. And the next day, I confirmed it, and I didn't tell them like what I was doing or anything like that. But I just asked, you know, oh hey, what were you guys talking about last night? And again, the room was so far away, all doors were closed, everything. I wouldn't have been able to hear it just with my own natural ears. And it was confirmed. It was exactly what I heard was what they were talking about. So to me, I was like, okay. So then I was hooked. Then it was like, okay, this is absolutely real. And I was hooked. And I didn't see any spiritual entities at this time or anything like that. That didn't come till later, but it was so after a little while of doing that, and most of it was really mundane. I would just kind of be out for a few seconds and then back in, and I didn't really do or see anything, and not anything really interesting. And there was one time
literally like a dopamine hit for you, isn't it? Because you did it. You did this 5 second thing, and you're like, well, that was cool. I'm going to try that again.
Yes.
And it sounds like where you're going is you did end up seeing entities, but it like slowly drags you in. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
100%. That's exactly right. So the next piece of validation where it was like, okay, this is 100% real. Like, because you know, somebody might say, well, you know, maybe you naturally didn't hear it, but still your ears picked up on it and your subconscious, you know, whatever. Well, this next one, the one that really confirmed it, I don't see any way that it could have been faked. So by this time I had my first apartment, and I was still doing this. I would sleep in the living room a lot because I didn't like being in my room and having the whole apartment just out of my view and not knowing what's going on. And again, it's the sleep paralysis stuff. And anytime I would hear a noise, so I never slept in my room. I always slept in the living room on the couch. And so I would still be practicing astral projection and stuff. And this, so I had this neighbor that had the apartment next to mine. And it was kind of, he was like kind of just like the classic caricature of a grumpy old guy that tells you to turn down your TV at 2 in the afternoon. And he would come over to my apartment and like say, turn down that TV, and it'd be 2 in the afternoon. And it's like,
are you a Friends fan? Have you ever watched Friends? Have you ever watched Friends? Okay, Mr. Heckles.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Heckles, the broom monster.
Yep. Yeah. I forgot all about that. That's basically this guy, just like less funny.
Okay,
so he was always angry at me, didn't like me at all. And, you know, I wasn't mean to him. I would turn down the TV and stuff. Well, I never saw the inside of his apartment because his door was always closed. His blinds were always closed. I assumed it would be like any other just old guy's apartment. It's probably, you know, clean and not a whole lot of stuff in there. I didn't really have any assumptions about it. Well, so this one night I astral projected, and I was facing our shared wall. So I thought, well, I'll go in there. I'll just see what his apartment looks like. And I went in there, and at first I thought, okay, maybe this is actually a dream or something, because the place was wrecked. It was messier than mine. This was my first apartment, so my place was trashed. But this was like way more trashed. And there was like kids' cereal boxes like spilled all over the counter. It was totally different than what you would expect from this old guy. And so after a few seconds or, you know, whatever, I didn't see him or anything, but I just saw just the state of his living room and his kitchen. Went back in my body. So the next day I wanted to confirm if it was real. So I made up this story, and I went over there and I was like, hey, I lost some mail. I wonder if it was delivered to your place. You know, do you mind checking? And so he when he first answered, he just kind of cracked the door, and I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, hang on. He opened the door the rest of the way to go look at the mail. And I was able to see inside his apartment, and it was exactly what I saw. It was totally trashed, kids' cereal, like knocked all over. And I never saw kids coming in out of his apartment. I still don't know why his place was like that. I never asked. Just was, I guess. But he was like, no, I don't got your mail. And I was like, okay, thanks anyway. And so that was when it was confirmed. This is real. Like, this is actually happening. There's no way my subconscious would have. I had no assumption. Like, there was no way that my mind would have just assumed that and then hallucinated it, because I didn't have any idea that his apartment would be like that. And then
no
to find out that
foreknowledge, in other words, like that that's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. And there couldn't have been any subconscious, like I couldn't have seen his apartment because he always had his door closed and his blinds closed. He just always lived in total seclusion. So anyway, well, after that confirmation, stuff started to ramp up a little bit, but this is where it started getting into the entity stuff. So there was another night, same apartment. I did it again, and I kind of floated into my kitchen, and I had one of those. So there was like when you look into the kitchen, you see the counter, but then the shelves were above it, so you have a gap where you can see straight through and you can see the sink and stuff. Yeah. So standing in the kitchen, I only saw about that, that like a midsection, but standing in the kitchen was something that was like dressed in white and it had some kind of sash over it, and it was like extremely still. It didn't move at all. It was almost like a statue. Which is weird because there's been times where I've had sleep paralysis, and sometimes some of the entities I've seen are like still as statues. It's freaky. Like sometimes they don't move at all. And it was like that, but I didn't get necessarily an evil feeling nor a good feeling. I didn't get any kind of feeling. It surprised me because this is the first time I saw anything. It didn't talk to me, didn't engage with me at all. And immediately I only saw it for maybe a second, and then I was back in my body. So that was like the first flash of seeing anything. So then just over the course of years, I continued to practice this and everything. So me and Christina started dating. We got engaged, we got married, had a kid, but our very first, and there's a whole backstory to this, but just to get to the highlights, the very first place that we moved into was this like little trailer. It was all I could afford. And while we were there, though, Christina was getting sleep paralysis. Me and her were both having sleep paralysis, like shared sleep paralysis, like attacks. Gosh, wow. Like, and she would see the same thing I saw. We were having that a lot. My daughter, who was like just born, like she didn't have any problem sleeping at first, but then like just kind of out of nowhere, she would have these really intense like night terrors where she would just like wake up screaming and inconsolable, and it was like terrifying. And which, by the way, after all this was done, and I'll explain how all that ended. But she's 14 now. She's never had a night terror after that.
Praise God.
Yeah. So it was like getting really bad. It was. Well, let me back up because there was actually something that happened that started all this. So when I
was actually curious. I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we first moved in, everything was relatively okay. We were kind of low on money, so we had a roommate, somebody that we worked with. We were still working at McDonald's, and
gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had somebody that we worked with move in to just help with some of the bills and stuff like that. She needed a place to stay too, and we had an extra room. And so she was a complete atheist, but she wasn't like antagonistic towards Christianity or anything. She knew we were Christian. It was just like, oh, okay, well, to each their own kind of thing. So
wait a minute. So you had gotten your life on track prior to marrying your wife?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So I was still doing.
Yet. Okay.
Yeah, I was like at the time I would say that I'm a Christian. I would describe myself that way, but I was doing all these new age things, like I was astral projecting stuff. And Christina knew. Christina knew it. She didn't exactly approve, but she didn't really fight me on it either because back then, her and I were both, and she would admit this too. We were both very spiritually immature. She never got into new age or anything, but she also didn't have a lot of. She was like me. She had a couple surface level things. Like she absolutely was a Christian, but it was really surface level stuff. She didn't have a lot of the deep theology. Like she knew what I was doing.
You're not really discipled.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So we never like argued about it or anything. She just kind of let me do my thing, and she just didn't want to involve herself in it herself. So I didn't push it on her or anything. So yeah, we had gotten married. We had our first kid. I was still doing the new age stuff. Well, I had this one experience that changed everything. This is when I finally saw everything for what it is. Praise God. And this was the main time that I saw entities and that we interacted together. So it was the middle of the day, and I was starting to do these things. They were called binaural beats, and they were supposed to help you astral project. It's basically you put on headphones, and this side would have a certain beat, like just this kind of like woo, woo, woo kind of thing, and then the other side would have something similar but just a little bit off. And it's supposed to like disjoint your. I don't know. It's supposed to help. I don't know how they explained it, but it's supposed to help you astral project. And so I was using that, and And I had left my body like probably easier than I ever did before. I had floated outside, and again, we lived in a trailer park, and I saw all of these just like entities. All of these, some of them looked like humans, some of them looked like monsters. I didn't feel any fear of any of them, but they just all looked different. They were all over. I mean, some of them were on the rooftop, some of them were on the street, and they were all walking towards this really. It was like I would explain it, I guess, like a portal, but it was just like it was this oval that was kind of in the middle of this street here on this side, and it was just blinding white light. Like it was just white light. I couldn't see in, but they were all heading towards this thing, and there was probably dozens, hundreds, maybe of these things. So I kind of walked / floated, whatever. I went up to the closest group that I saw. It was a group about five or six. A couple of them looked like monsters, a couple of them looked like humans. But to me, it felt as normal as if you were just going and asking a stranger in the grocery store, like, "Hey, what aisle is the cereal on?" or something. Like I didn't feel like anything scary or even really weird about it, even though it was weird. But so I went up to them and I said, "Hey, what's going on? What is that? What are you guys? What's everybody doing?" And so they looked at me and they seemed pleasant. Well, actually, one of the human looking ones seemed kind of impatient and was like, "Come on, we got to go. Like, don't waste time with this." And didn't engage me directly at all. But a couple of the other ones took a lot of interest in me, and they didn't answer my question. I never got the answer to that. But they said, "Oh, who are you? Are you on our side, or are you with us? Are you of this world?" And I was like, "No, I'm a human, and I'm astral projecting right now." And they knew what that was. And they're like, "Oh," and then immediately they were like, "Oh, okay. Well, hey, look, I know sometimes that's really hard for you guys to be able to do. If you ever have any trouble astral projecting, you can ask us. We'll come help you." And I at least had enough foundation in the church where that made me uncomfortable. Like there was enough foundation where I figured I probably wasn't going to do that. But I was like, "Oh, well, thank you for the offer. I really appreciate that. I should head back now." And they were like, "Okay, well, we hope to hear from you soon, whatever." And so I left, went back in my body, and I just kind of knew, like, okay, that's a little too close to like praying to something that's not God. And I at least had enough foundation to know that something, I wasn't going to do that. Something was unsettling about it. It wasn't in the way that the entity said it or anything. They seemed perfectly pleasant, and I'm sure they were all demons now, but because of what happened right after. But I just, I don't know. It was really strange. So
is this the first time that you got like a check almost in your spirit that, okay.
Yep. This is the first time that anything happened that made me even a little bit uncomfortable. And so the next time, it was like a couple days later, the next time I was trying to astral project, I was doing the binaural beat thing, and I just, for whatever reason, could not do it. I couldn't even get close to it. Just couldn't. And then I remembered the offer of those group of entities, and I remembered that, and I was thinking, no, I cannot bring myself to do that. There was just something where I just knew I can't bring myself to do it. And again, I wasn't even thinking these things were demons or anything. I didn't know what they were, but I just thought, no, I'm not. I guess I'm just not going to astral project today. So I took the headphones off and just turned on the TV, went about my business. Well, it wasn't long after that literally all hell broke loose in the trailer. And this is when Christina and I started having the shared sleep paralysis stuff, where we weren't having that before. Jacqueline, my firstborn daughter, she was having these night terrors that she never had before, never had since. This is like stuff would happen in the middle of the day. We would see shadow figures run past our window in the middle of the day. And like so fast that you almost couldn't. It's like so fast that you saw something, but you didn't see it enough to really get a sense of the form. And voices. There was this one time, and remember, at this point we had that atheist roommate. Well,
Yes.
she started hearing and seeing stuff too, and she's all freaked out by it. There's this one time that we were all in the living room watching TV together, and it sounded like a bomb went off in our bathroom. Like it sounded like I thought maybe the water tank exploded or something. Like it sounded like a bomb went off in there. And so we ran in there to see what, and we had cats. The cats all freaked out and ran away. And so we went in there. Nothing was touched. Everything was like perfect. Like everything was exactly as we left it. So that was really weird. So stuff like that started ramping up. It got so bad that we all started just sleeping in the living room together because we were too afraid to be like. There was one time that our roommate, she said that she saw she woke up and she saw this this like ball of light, and she said she got the most like angry, hate-filled feeling from this thing, and it zoomed off into me and Christina's room, and so just stuff like that kept ramping up, and especially what was like really breaking my heart was Jackie, because I had this little baby girl just screaming, and I couldn't like these night terrors. I couldn't do anything about it, and it was and then I started to get the sense, I know what this is. It's those beings I talked to, and they're mad, they're angry that I didn't take their offer. They're angry that I didn't ask them for help, and I knew it was them. I don't know how, I knew it was them, and I knew that they were angry, and at that point I realized this is all demons. This is all demonic. It's got to be, and so I like. Probably for the first time since I was a kid, I had like my first adult, really honest prayer to Jesus. And I told Jesus, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have made such a huge mistake. I never should have got into this. I have been so wrong. And I don't know what to do. Like, Lord, I really, really need your help. Please help me get out of this mess I've made for myself and my family and our friend. So then, out of nowhere, so yeah, this stuff was getting real bad. I had that prayer, and I knew that I had to get rid of New Age stuff. I didn't know really where to go or how to do anything. So
did you have a lot of books and stuff too?
That
you collected over the books that probably New Agers would even know, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Some they would, some they might not. And most of it was astral projection. That was like my thing. That was what I was really into. I looked at it as like a superpower, and it was super addicting. And
well, of course, you're into comics and all this stuff too. Yeah. So that speaks right to the geek that lives on the inside of you. Yeah,
absolutely. Totally get that. Absolutely. It's like, oh, all this stuff is real. And and I mean, it really built up my ego, and like, it made me like, it was horrible. But so I was definitely like brought down to humility because of this, because I realized like I'm messing with stuff. I have no idea what I'm messing with. So I asked Jesus for help. Then there was this one day. So by this time I was on disability, because I have a rare degenerative bone disease, and and so I was on disability. So I would stay home with Jackie while Christina would go work. And there was this one day, like me and Jackie, we would always hang out on the recliner together, and we'd watch TV and stuff. And I was scrolling around, just kind of lost. I definitely, like, when I said that prayer, I rededicated my life to Christ, and I said, Lord, I'll do whatever. Like, just what do I need to do? And so I happened upon this show. I was scrolling around, and I saw this title to this show, and it was on a Christian channel, because I'm thinking I probably should watch some more Christian stuff. And the name of the show was "It's Supernatural" with Sid Roth, and that appealed to me. The title appealed to me because it's like, okay, I'm dealing with supernatural stuff. Let's check it out. And this, by the way, is not an endorsement of every guest that he's ever had on, or
I know. I know.
It's nothing one way or another.
In the comments talking about stuff like that, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. But this one episode, though, it was exactly what I needed. The guest, I never heard of him before. He had kind of a funny name, so it was easy for me to remember. I'm usually really bad with names, but his name was L.A. Marzulli.
Yeah.
And
everybody knows him. Yeah.
Yep. And he was talking about all of the stuff that I had questions about since I was a kid. He was talking about how aliens fit into the Bible, how we know they're demonic. He was talking about Genesis 6. It was the first time I ever heard the word Nephilim. I'd never heard that word before, and I'd never even thought about Genesis 6 before that. He was tying it in with the alien abduction phenomenon. This is how we know it's demonic. And then he even got into his testimony, how he came out of New Age. And it was like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, this is an answer to prayer. And
Yes.
and I TiVoed it. This is how old this was.
Yes.
So I TiVoed it. So and then when Christina came home, I was like, you got to watch this. We got, because she was aware of everything that was going on. And so I watched it again with her, and we were just, our minds were blown. Like, we had next to no money at that time. We were just basically had nothing. But the little bit that we had, we ended up buying, like, there was a book and DVD set that LA had, and we ended up getting that. And I would watch those DVDs just over and over and over again and read. I think it was Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural. I believe that was the book. And it was just all this information about this stuff that I had been wondering about for years. And it was like, okay, now I know I got to rededicate my life to Christ. And so I got rid of all of my New Age stuff. I dumped all the books, got rid of all the stupid figurines that I had, and anything New Age related, I removed from the house. I threw away, took it straight out to the garbage. But we were still having these issues. We were still having some spiritual attack issues, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Because I'm not astral projecting anymore. I rededicated my life to Christ. I'm following Christ. I don't have any, like, I've got rid of all the New Age stuff, but I was still getting attacks. And so by this point in my mind at the time, LA was like a celebrity. I mean, he may as well have been like, some like Brad Pitt or something, some famous person that that is like completely untouchable, and you're never going to know, you're never going to meet in your life or be friends with. So I was thinking, like, I really want to ask him a question, but I don't know how to. I'm never going to be able. He's on TV. I'm never going to be able to contact him. But I decided to try anyway. I went on his website and I filled out his contact form, and I just laid out what was going on. And I asked him, hey, when you got out of New Age and you were trying to get out of it, were you still getting spiritually attacked? And if so, like, how did you deal with that? So the next day, I got an email back from his wife, Peggy, who's like one of the sweetest women in the world. And he's like, LA got your message. He's on the road right now, but he would like to call and talk to you on the phone tomorrow. Are you available? And I'm like, my mind is like blown.
I'll be available. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I was like, so I wrote back, said, yes, absolutely. Here's my phone number. And when Christina came home, I told her, I was like, you are not going to believe the email that I got. And so I told her, like, I'm actually going to get to talk to L.A. Marzulli. Like, he's actually going to personally call me and talk to me about this issue. And, she was just elated and beside herself. And she's less prone to getting starstruck than I am. I've seen her starstruck one time, and it's when she met John Schlitt from Petra. That band.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one time that I actually saw, because I was working at Skywatch at the time. This was years after this, but I was working at Skywatch. Yeah. We had John Schlitt as a guest, and I didn't know Petra at all. I didn't grow up on that music. So to me, it was just, just another guest. But to her, that was the first. Yeah, that was the first time I really saw her starstruck. It was the most adorable thing in the world. I loved it. But it's one of my favorite memories. But anyway, so back to the LA thing. I'm like totally starstruck. I'm beside myself. I'm just thinking, I hope I don't say anything stupid. I hope I'm not too nervous on the phone. So the next day he calls, and he basically gives me he's like, okay, so I read your email, and he gave me a 20-minute crash course on spiritual warfare, which I never had before. He's like, you need to understand, every time, he's like, I had to do this too. Every time you astral project, you're basically opening a portal where these things can come through. You need to close those in the name of Jesus.
Close them down. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, and you need to use the name of Jesus to expel these demons out of your house. You need to reclaim that land in the name of Jesus. That your home in the name of Jesus. Pray for a hedge of protection, around the house. All of this stuff. And he's like, that's why they're still messing with you. And he explained how, like, when you get involved in this stuff, you're giving up your territory to the enemy and allowing them. You're inviting them and giving them basically legal rights to come in and do whatever they want in your life and on your property and stuff. And he's like, so you need to reclaim that in the name of Jesus. You on your own cannot do anything about this. But Jesus can, and if you've fully given your life to Jesus, if you're following Jesus now, Jesus allows you to use his authority. It's not your authority, it's his authority. You can use his authority in his name to get rid of these things and to close those portals. So after the conversation, I thanked him and got off the phone. And then when Christina got back home, I told her the whole thing, and I said, okay, so tomorrow. I want, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I said, tomorrow I want you, and the roommate was still there. She was still living there. You, the roommate, and Jackie, just like go walk around Walmart or something for a while and let me do this, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I definitely didn't want anybody else to be like in the house in case. I'm thinking like Exorcist, I'm thinking stuff's going to be flying off the walls, and none of that happened. But it was funny, and so so they left, and I said, I'll call you when I'm done. So I did what LA did, or what he said to do. And I walked through each room of the house, and I said, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, any portals that I have opened, I command to be closed. Anything evil, anything against Jesus here, I command to leave. This you have no place here. This is the house of God now. I fully repent of everything that I've done. The words themselves aren't as important as what you're actually saying or what you're actually doing. Like, it's not, the power isn't in the actual words, the power is in Jesus. Power is in the name of Jesus. So and that like LA never gave me like a script to say. He said, you use your own words, because it's not like a magical incantation or something. So
and you have to be a true follower of Jesus Christ for any of this to work. Like that.
God can do whatever he wants. If somebody's really calling out to Jesus and they're not a Christian yet, so I'm not going to say he can't. But generally, generally for it to be like a foolproof thing, you got to be right with Jesus. So I went through, and at the time it was happening, at the time I was doing all this, I wasn't feeling anything. But when it was done, when I was done with the last final room, all of a sudden the trailer just seemed brighter. It just seemed a lot lighter. And then I started feeling really sick. Like, I felt like I got hit by a truck all of a sudden. And people listening are probably like, that's weird. Shouldn't you have felt better? Well, I think what was going on, I actually had to take a day off of work for it. I was just feeling just drained. Like, I felt like I had just ran a marathon. I think the reason, like, while it was happening, I was in a spiritual battle. I just didn't realize it, but Jesus was there helping me, sustaining me. The Holy Spirit was sustaining me and everything. But by the time that everything was over and the enemy was gone and all the portals were closed, now it's recovery mode. And then, now that's where I started feeling like, and that was the only time I had ever felt that. Haven't felt it since. And I think it was because it was literally the first time I had ever done this.
I have just started a Substack. What is a Substack, you might ask? It is a place that contains early access to audio-only podcast versions of full daily Renegade videos, plus my personal blog, which includes original articles, show notes, interview transcripts, and so much more. This is the only place to get this amazing resource, and it is not available to the general public. Adding a subscription to my Substack to your daily Renegade membership will ensure that you have full access to every format of everything that I do. So head on over to joshpeck.substack.com or click on the link in the description below to join up now for only $5 a month or $50 a year. And if you can do it, I suggest doing the $50 a year because it's cheaper in the long run, and essentially you get 2 months for free. So I cannot wait to see you there. Take care and God bless.
It's like when you work out for the first time, you feel terrible the next day, but it's good for you. Like, it's a good thing that you work out and exercise. And the more you do it, the less you feel like garbage. And the more used to it you get. And I'm not saying that people should go looking for fights with the enemy, but just
for sure. But explaining your experience is very helpful though for people to if they're in this position or whatnot. Yeah.
So I called I called Christina and the roommate, said, you guys can come back home now. I think everything's okay. And when they got home, I was laying down and they're like, what happened? And I was like, honestly, like I didn't experience anything. But once it was done, because even when they got back, they were like, man, it feels better in here. It just feels better.
Mhm.
It feels more like this is a home now. It feels brighter. It's hard to explain. There's people that probably have experienced that before, and you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
It's hard to put into words, but then they saw me laying on the couch, just like drained and just exhausted, and so they were like what happened? They probably expected I was going to tell them this like crazy story about like this big battle, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like that during the time at all. It was just the aftermath of it. So I was like, honestly, from my perspective, nothing happened, but clearly something did happen, because I think everything's good now. I think everything's gone. Like, and I think I did go through a battle in the spiritual that I didn't physically experience, but now I'm feeling some of the aftermath of it. And I was fine after like a day or two, and then I was able to go back to work and everything. But after that, sleep paralysis stopped. All the night terrors from Jackie, that all stopped. Like everything stopped, and everything was fine. And at that moment, that was when I realized, like, oh my gosh, there is real power here. This isn't some fake new age forgery. Yeah. This is real power. And I never was taught this in church. Like I wasn't brought up with this. There must be more people like me out there who have never heard this before and are going through the same thing. And it was at that moment that I just knew I wanted to be in ministry. I knew I wanted to write books and do conferences, and I wanted to be like LA. Like I wanted to do, like, he was my hero at the time, still is.
Yes.
And I wanted to like follow in his footsteps and do exactly what he was doing. So that was the day that I decided to get into ministry, and I started writing my first book, started doing my first podcast, and just learning how to do it. And then, that was, oh man, well, let's see, Jackie's 14 now, so this must have been 12 or 13 years ago, somewhere around there. And now I'm working at Prophecy Watchers. We do conferences a couple times a year. I've got a bunch of books out and movies and a bunch of stuff and looking back, it's not about just me fulfilling my dreams. It's not about that at all. Looking back all the way from my childhood, I can see the plan that God had for me. He knows the end from the beginning. Yeah. He went before me. He knew what he wanted me to do. And for me, it's this specific thing, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be that specific thing for everybody. Just because, and I want to make this like really clear, just because like I have books and I'm on TV and all this stuff, I see all of this in a completely different light now than I did when I was first exposed to it. Because when I was first exposed to it, I'm thinking like celebrities and things like that. That's not how it is. Like, we're servants. LA would never in a million years describe himself as a celebrity. And every time I've ever tried to give him a compliment, he always comes back with, well, all glory goes to Jesus, but thank you. Yeah. And
his heart is amazing. I love his heart so much, man.
Yeah. And so like, and I never got into this trying to chase celebrity. It was never about that. It was always 100% wanting to help people that maybe in my situation. And I still continue that too. But the main thing is that's not going to be the same path for everybody. For some people, it might just be being a prayer warrior. For some people, there are some people, I know a lot of my audience are people even older than me, and I love that. I think that's great. Some of them can't get out of bed, and the biggest thing that I want to like, you don't have to do all this like public stuff to be useful. Like we need prayer work. Like prayer is like one of the most, if not the most, like important thing that a Christian can do in spiritual warfare. And we need those people to help us. We're flawed human beings too. There's no us and them. Like there's no like there's you people down here and there's us up here that are on TV and stuff. It's not that. We're servants. Right. If anything, we should be lower than everybody else, than the people that we serve. And that's how it should be. But we desperately we rely on people's prayers to help get us through, because it's not like it's easy. Like it's not like it's all just fun and games and everything. We can't do this without all these people helping support us and praying for us. And then again, but at the same time, we want to be there for them to teach them how to do that, and to teach, so we're all helping each other. Like Paul says, some people are an ear, some are an eye. There's nothing more important than anything else. And I really want to make that clear, because a lot of people are probably hearing me for the first time on this show. My audience already knows all this about me, but I know I've only been on your show one other time before, so your audience might not be as familiar with how I look at these things. And that's the main thing that I want to put out there is like me, people like me, LA, the people that we consort with and that we work together and things, we see ourselves as servants. And if you get involved with a pastor or with even if it's somebody in the fringe Christian community that just happens to have a moment of spotlight, like if you come across somebody and they don't have that attitude, stay away from them.
Agreed.
Because sometimes those people do creep up, and the good thing is, it seems like I can't speak to mainstream churches and like mega churches and stuff, but at least in our fringe Christian thing, it does seem like God does weed out those people pretty quick. But still, it's not, that's not a foolproof perfect thing. Like you got to test people. You got to don't follow anybody that's not genuine. If you're watching somebody and you don't feel like you can even get to know them, like, because they're
untouchable I know. Yeah.
Don't even bother. That is so anti what the rest of us are trying to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So
we've experienced that in the church itself. I know what's crazy. I was actually talking to a coworker the other day who had, kind of lost his way in the faith. And we were talking about a certain church in our community. And honestly, he's been watching this channel and just like soaking in all of the things that are coming from this channel that are helping him to answer questions that no one has ever been able to answer for him, which is amazing. But we were talking about this specific church that technically would be a mega church. Lance and I used to attend years ago as well. And he was talking about what has really frustrated him is if he would have a question, he would go up and ask somebody on staff, and one of those staff members would point him to another person.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I have this question for you.
Yeah.
Like, I need to ask you. It's like they're untouchable. It's like that, and so those kinds of things have just really bothered us as well, because it's like, we can't, like, pastors and all this, I get there has to be certain boundaries. Boundaries are a huge thing. But at the same time, like, it can't be a celebrity status where your pastor of your church is an untouchable person, and I understand people have huge congregations and you have to have other pastors and other things and things of that nature. I get that. But there still has to be a level there where it's like, there's relationship, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's all about the attitude behind it, because I've got an okay sized audience. It's more than like, if everybody demanded my time all the time, I can't.
You can't. I know
there's not enough hours in the day, but
Same here,
it's not an ego thing. I don't feel like, well, my time isn't worth it. That's what I'm put on earth for. Like, I'm put on earth for ministry. That's what my time on earth is for. That, and also being a husband and a father. But it's just in a practical sense. And, sometimes, like, if somebody had a question that I could answer, there have been times where it's like, well, I'm right in the middle of a conference right now, and I want to give enough time to answer this. Can you give me like a week? And if I forget, if I don't email back, please email me right back, and I'll please remind me. It's okay to bug me a little bit. As long as they're polite about it. But because there are people that I won't deal with. Like, if they are just really and they get angry, and they start accusing me of things that I don't have in my heart. And I just don't deal with people like that, because sometimes people want to pick a fight. Or the only other time too is every once in a couple different things happen, which is interesting. One of them is sometimes I will get a question that's really would be a better question for somebody else who has that specialty. There's some things that I just don't know because it's not really my area, and I can't study literally everything. But I for the most part, like 99% of the time, if somebody's got a really like specific question that's not in my area, I know somebody who would be better equipped to answer that. And then so sometimes I will say, I'll admit, I honestly don't know. I haven't looked into this myself, so I don't want to steer you in the wrong way. But my friend so and so, here's his email. This is his specialty. He knows a lot about this. He would probably be a lot more equipped to answer your question. I've never had anybody get upset with me about that. And then there's also the people, and I understand this temptation. I understand it. And so I'm not necessarily like, I'm not at all downing somebody for doing this, but just, there are people, most of the people in, our fringe Christian space, they don't have a lot of people in their personal lives they can talk to because their family, their church, they think they're crazy. I totally understand that.
Yeah. Or they don't even have a church because there ain't nowhere to go that's sound anymore. Yeah, I
know. Yeah, exactly. And so unfortunately, sometimes what it does to people, they so want to be heard, and they so want to share their ideas with somebody, that sometimes they'll email people like us, just for that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But where it gets a little bit into, entitlement realm is when, like, if I get a 20-page email and it's somebody's big theory, I don't know that I'm going to have time to read that. But and I'll try to not ignore the person. I'll try to at least say, like, that's a lot of information. I'm going to try to get this to when I can, but I cannot guarantee when I'm going to be able to. And it's just because there's only so many hours in the day, and they don't really have a question beyond what do you think about this? And it's their own thing that I haven't really looked into or know anything about anyway. So it just doesn't really apply. And most of the time people accept that and then it's okay. But sometimes people will get really angry about that, and they'll start acting like I'm entitled, or that I'm brushing them off because I think I'm up here and they're down here. And it's like, it's not that. It's just, it's not practical. And I don't have a way to help you. Like, you're only asking what I think about it. And it's something that I've never looked into in my life. This is a brand new thing. And I just simply do not have the hours in the day to take. I mean, it would take hours to dissect this to even understand it, let alone provide some kind of answer. And I don't want to just give you some answer to get you to leave me alone, and then maybe that's not the right answer. I don't want to mislead somebody. So sometimes that can kind of put us in a weird place. But so that's really rare. And I understand the motivation. Once it gets to the point where people are getting angry at me for something that I literally am not doing wrong, that's where it's like, I don't. By that point, I just don't engage anymore. But it's like,
that's where the boundaries come in.
So
we have to have those boundaries too. We do.
Yeah,
just like
absolutely.
you said, we have. Like I said this on the last video I was on with Matt. Matt and Shepard for the King and I were chatting about this, but just simply, I would love to be able to answer every DM, every email, but dude, I physically can't, no. And I also work, and I'm a wife, and I'm a cat mom to 5 cats, and I have a house to keep up with. It's a lot. I wish I could. And I'm also not doing this full time right now. When I'm there, I'll have more time. I set aside time in my week to go through YouTube comments, DMs, and emails. And I only have I literally set a timer on my watch so that I can do all of that. And then past that, I can't. So it's like, we're only human beings. I don't have a staff. I don't, you know what I'm saying? So it's all of those things come into play too. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I edit all my videos. I prepare all the content. Dude, it's a full-time job. I got home from the restaurant last night and still had stuff to do that I'm preparing for an interview next week. It's a constant thing. So I totally get where you're coming from. And I think what's great is, I would say, this audience here gets that, it sounds like your audience there gets that. I think it's only a select few of fringe people that don't. And hopefully videos like this will help them know, hey, we love you. We're not ignoring you, but we also have to have boundaries around our time too, because otherwise, dude, I could be caught up in this 24/7 on top of that.
Exactly.
And then it sends me into a mental spiral because I can't keep up with the news cycle is everything's overwhelming.
Oh, and that's so important. I'm glad you brought that up, because the last thing that I want people to think is that this is just an us problem because we're up here and we're on TV. We got all these things to deal with, and all of you audience members couldn't possibly understand. No, this is everybody. This is everybody. It's not us and them. We don't have unique things. Because we can easily get to the point where we overwork ourselves, and I've fallen into that. And oh my gosh, I won't get into too many of the specifics. It's not anything here at Prophecy Watchers. Oh my gosh, Prophecy Watchers is amazing.
One of the hottest subjects in Christian circles today are the shocking revelations coming from the Dead Sea Scrolls and their unique calendar. It seems like they knew more about the arrival of the Messiah than most Christians do today. His arrival did not catch them by surprise. They even knew the exact year of his arrival. Since their calendar got it right the first time, what does it have to say about the timing of the Messiah's next arrival? Why are the years 2025 and 2026 so interesting prophetically? Well, get ready for 2 highly anticipated, groundbreaking books on the Dead Sea Scrolls from yours truly. Forgotten Prophecies of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Unlocking the Final Jubilee of the Church Age is available now in 2 volumes, representing almost 700 pages of research on this fascinating subject that has people talking and wondering if we really are living in the final days of human history. Volume 1, which I have right here, delves into the enigmatic Jewish sect called the Essenes and their amazingly accurate prophetic calendars. Volume 2 explores new feasts and festivals. that the scenes observed and their prophetic significance, as well as tying everything together into a coherent prophetic timeline from the foundation of the book of Revelation. Well, according to ancient texts that contain completely accurate prophecies to date, we are on the precipice of entering the final jubilee of the church age. So who could have known how much influence the writings that this mysterious group of prophets and scribes hundreds of years before Christ would have on our understanding of end times prophecy? Well, as it turns out, much of what we've been taught about Israel in the first century is incomplete. There were, in fact, Jewish believers who knew exactly what to expect in his first coming, that he would be God in the flesh and that he would die for our sins. If they accurately predicted the first arrival of the Jewish Messiah, what did they have to say about his soon return? The revelations found within these books have never been uncovered before, and they affect each and every one of us today. So click on the links in the description below or head on over to prophecywatchers.com to get your copies of my new 2-volume book set today.
Oh, this is such a God thing. But in the past, before I was a little bit more wise just on how to, because like when you're in ministry, you are in ministry. You know, you're called by God to be in ministry, to do this thing, to minister to people, to be a servant. But especially if you're married and have kids, I mean, you have a responsibility to other people too that have nothing to do.
That's your first ministry, actually.
Yes, exactly. And so earlier on in me working in ministry, I did allow myself to get really, really consumed with ministry to where I basically wasn't paying nearly as much attention to my family as I should have. And I was like just locked in a room editing videos all day and you know, for weeks on end, and only coming up to eat or use the bathroom or whatever, and just feeling like I had to. And and again, I won't get into details, but it wasn't a good environment for me anyway. But anyway, all that aside, that really taught me, like, okay, wow, it's good to want to minister as much as possible, but Josh, you have a wife, you have kids, like they need you too. Like that's your core right there. Take care of them first. And so coming out of that and looking back, it's like, it is easy for us to allow ourselves to get overworked. And that doesn't mean that we're unapproachable. Like, people can email us and ask questions, but before anybody starts like getting angry about it, just, give people the benefit of the doubt and just assume like they're probably not trying to be a jerk to you by ignoring you. They probably just have families and they have other things. And I've had to put boundaries on when I do ministry and when I don't. And I love, like, I work at a place that completely respects that. Everybody at Prophecy Watchers is like that. 9 to 5 is ministry time. And I've made this deal with my wife too, and our kids. I mean, because it was getting so bad. I was missing Christmas. I was missing like kids' birthday parties. It was bad. And but now, like, I've made this agreement with them that it's like, okay, unless it's some really special circumstance, like when we do conferences, I'm gone for about a week, that's fine. But because that's not every day, that's a conference. But by and large, day to day, 9 to 5 is ministry time. After 5, unless it's just some special thing where just something needs to be done, after 5 is family time. And and even if something comes up, like, since coming to Prophecy Watchers, I've never been even asked to break that. And I never would even be required to. Like, the one exception is conferences, but, obviously the family understands that. And like this last conference, it was actually fun. I brought my daughter to it and she helped me sell books and stuff. She learned how to read the card reader. And so
I love it.
Yeah. And like Christina was thrilled about that. And this next one, it's really close. It's just like basically the next town over. So they'll probably come and visit me on that one. And so there's ways to incorporate the family into that. But when I do interviews, sometimes schedules just don't line up. And it's like, okay, well, I've got this time that I can do ministry stuff. And 9 to 5 is Prophecy Watchers time. I get a lunch break, and I don't ever eat lunch. I usually eat breakfast and I eat dinner. I do like intermittent fasting. So usually I use my lunch break to do my interviews or any daily Renegade stuff that I need to get done. Yeah, exactly. And it works out great. And it works out perfect. So, and there really hasn't been any times where I've had to really go much beyond that. And so it's just such a good position to be in. But for that to all work out, where I can be effective in ministering to people, because that time that I was overworking like crazy, I wasn't being very effective in ministering to anybody because I was burnt out. And I wasn't really able to give anybody a whole lot of time. I mean, I even stopped talking to a lot of my friends. I've had to come back to like friends I've had for years and apologize. I'm so sorry. I've spent like, years not talking to anybody and just shutting myself off. And it was just a bad situation. But because of that and learning from that, now, we've kind of learned that this is like the best way to do it, where it's best of both worlds. I don't get burnt out at all from ministry work. So I'm more effective as a servant to my audience and as a servant to anybody else who needs ministering in any capacity. But I'm also absolutely here for my family. And there's been times where family stuff comes up during work time, and I just tell work, like if it's something important and it just, it's something important, I just ask them like, hey, just recently, this is just a little personal anecdote thing, but it's just the blessings of God. And I want to brag on Prophecy Watchers because they're amazing, but
they are.
So I
Mondo, by the way, he was my first guest ever on this show.
Awesome.
When I had like nobody on this channel, and I just reached out and was like, "Hey, would you?" And he's like, "Yeah." He was just so like, love him. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I love too, is like the way they are, like that's how they are in real life.
I know.
Like
I know.
What you see on TV, that's how they are in real life.
Yeah.
And so recently we're working on this documentary about the pre-trib rapture, basically, and it's an answer to a pre-wrath position. It's like
I knew about this. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
you guys are working on that. Yeah, I've heard you talking about it on other shows. Okay.
Absolutely. So we're working on that, and so next week I was supposed to interview Gary Stearman for that. So I came home, I told Christina, and she's like, "Oh, I had something scheduled for the kids' homeschooling co-op thing." And I was like, "Oh no." And now in the past, I wouldn't even have asked, and I would have just said, "Christina, you got to reschedule, or you can't do it." I would have just said that. And it's funny because I still have some of those lingering feelings, because and Christina does too. And at first she was just like, "All right, we just won't do it." And I was like, "Wait, no." I was like, let me text. I really don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think it's going to be fine. Let me just ask if I can reschedule and if it's that big of a deal. And she said, okay. So I texted and just said, hey, totally my fault, guys. I completely forgot. There's this homeschooling co-op thing for the younger two girls Christina was going to take. She was going to leave the older three with me. I probably still could do the interview. I'd have to bring my older three with me. They are well behaved and they're quiet, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it's that, or we reschedule. What are you thinking? And it was just like, oh, we can just reschedule. It's like, we got to do it soon, but we can reschedule. It's not that big of a deal. And I was like, okay, great. And that's all it was.
That's awesome.
And so, and this is something that technically is during work time,
work hours.
But it's one of those, like, I've getting to know Bob. It's funny. I've known Bob Ulrich ever since I started in ministry, basically. Ever since I started. I met him when I started at Skywatch. But we didn't really get a chance to know each other until we were talking about the possibility of me going to Prophecy Watchers. And so in some of those talks, like, we were just talking about different things, and his view is like, he's like, yeah, we do work really hard here. We do. And we have things that need to get done. But at the same time, you have a life. You're a human being with a wife and kids, and sometimes things come up. You're going to have eye appointments or dentist appointments, and you can't always do that after 5 or on weekends or whatever. He's like, so sometimes that stuff happens. And it's just a really awesome, balanced approach to ministry that I think it's lacking in a lot of other places. Because again, just as when you have your heart in something, you have a temptation to want to just throw yourself completely into that and ignore everything else. And that can be dangerous. So it's a really good situation where it's like perfectly balanced. So again, just for the audience, that kind of gives a little sneak peek on just how some of the behind the scenes ministry stuff kind of works. And so, and with your pastor, even your local pastor, it's going to be a similar thing. He's got a life too. So don't automatically get angry at somebody if they don't answer you, or if but at the same time, pay attention to their attitude about it. Because if they do have this elitist attitude, like they're too good for you or you're beneath them, then I would suggest that's not a church. Yeah, that's not a church to be in. So yeah, there's a fine line between those two things.
There is. And I think, honestly, Josh, I'm glad you brought this forward, because one of the things that's been coming up a lot in the comments on this channel is like everybody's just overwhelmed with life. And Pete, last time Pete and I were chatting, he was talking about the fact that, you know, everybody's life is just, we're busier now. We have, you know, we have phones and everything's on our phone, and just how we deal with life. So there's so much wisdom in what you said, whether somebody is in a platformed ministry or whether their everyday life, or maybe they're being taken advantage of by their job that they work that has nothing to do with ministry, but they're working 72 hours a week and get 2 hours of sleep a night and can't see their family. Like, that is not biblical living. And so, you know, I think that there's so much wisdom in what you said that you can pull out for wherever you're at in life and make it applicable to your own personal situation. And just know, guys, it's okay to have boundaries. You got to have boundaries with yourself. You got to have boundaries with your own family, boundaries with your job, boundaries everywhere. Like, the Lord wants us to have that so that we can show up and serve and be our best. And so that we're not pouring from an empty cup, because we can't do anything. And if we read the Bible, like, Jesus got alone by himself. Jesus also got worn out by people. Like, it's very clear that's what happened to him. So, you know, that's nothing he didn't deal with. But there are things in, you know, that I point over there because my Bible's sitting over there. But there's so much in our 66 books that, you know, obviously give us clues, and not even just clues, but like straight up how to live. And this stuff is really important so that we can show up and be our best, and we can bless the people that the Lord has put us in front of to serve. And wherever you are at in life, you are to serve those people that the Lord has given you influence over. So Josh, I'm glad you brought all that forward, man, because I think it's just so pertinent to the times that we're living in, on top of all the stuff that we've talked about today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And you know, even this interview is a great example of something like that too, because originally we were going to do this last, I forget the day, but it was 2
days ago.
We had to move
it.
It was a day where anytime I do anything Daily Renegade, I always tell, or anything involving that. I guess this technically is more about Prophecy Watchers, because I should tell people I've got a 2-volume set, new book set called The Final Cataclysm. And I do talk about New Age. Yeah, I do talk about New Age stuff in there, and that you absolutely should go to prophecywatchers.com to get. But anytime I do these, you know, I always make sure to tell people, like, there's always a possibility. It doesn't happen often, but I might get called into the office for an interview or for just something. If that happens, I might have to reschedule the interview. And by the way, that's nothing that Prophecy Watchers has told me to do. That's just something I do, because to me, it's like, okay, you know, Jesus, you know, top, then the family, Prophecy Watchers, Daily Renegade. I just for my own thing, I put Daily Renegade just at the bottom of all that. Not that I don't think of it that way, but if it just your
order of priority.
Yeah,
I get that.
And so it's never like, I'm not going to cancel an interview over it, but I'll try to reschedule. But it worked out better doing it today anyway, because today Christina takes the kids to the homeschooling co-op thing, and they leave pretty early. So I figured this was going to go longer than an hour, because the last one did. So I was able to, and I'm totally cool with that. But I was able to start some Prophecy Watchers stuff early today, before 9, because the family's not here anyway, to give myself a little extra time to know that I had time available, so we didn't have to cut this short. So it all works out, and it's all about just balancing a schedule. And people that do feel overwhelmed, you probably got to go through and do the same thing. Just look at, you know, you got to have your own priorities, and you got to find some balance that just works for you in your own life. And Jesus will help you with that. Like, he definitely helped me with that. So yeah. And I really appreciate you being open and willing to just moving it to Friday. And this worked out a lot better anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I got like 2 questions I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. Sure. One thing I had mentioned to you offline is that, especially because I'm doing a lot of these interviews and testimonies coming out of New Age, a lot of times what I've seen with people in New Age is that they swing from one pendulum to the other. So like, they become basically cessationists, where they don't believe in, you know, the manifestation gifts of 1 Corinthians and stuff like that. So my question for you is did you ever go through a phase where you were like, oh man, because of the things I've seen in New Age, I want to make sure, like, I don't believe in any of that because all I ever saw was demonic? And if so, how did you come to the place where you knew that the gifts were still operating today and could see the difference between what is authentic and what is a counterfeit? So I know that's a loaded of 3 questions, but I would love for you to chat about that.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the first half of this episode of the Sharpening Report. You know, if you are a Bible-believing Christian who opposes the kingdom of darkness trying to run the world right now, then you are a renegade to the satanic system. We here at Daily Renegade wear that badge proudly. So, if you're a renegade as well and you want to see the rest of this video, head on over to dailyrenegade.com right now and get a membership today. Not only will you get the rest of this video, but you'll get our full catalog of Sharpening Report episodes and Daily Renegade update videos on topics such as Bible prophecy, science, technology, the Nephilim, aliens, and so much more. All of our episodes at Daily Renegade are early access, so as a member, you'll get the videos before anyone else does. Daily Renegade also offers videos not available anywhere else due to social media censorship. We also have a community page only for members where we can all fellowship together without fear of censorship. It's basically the best of Facebook and YouTube rolled into one without any of the garbage. Memberships are only $10 a month or $100 a year, and if you can do it, I suggest getting the $100 a year because it's cheaper in the long run, and essentially you get 2 months for free that way. So come join our family of renegades at dailyrenegade.com right now. The link is in the description below, and we'll see you there.